how's it going, guys? It's Tarkhan. Welcome to another video. I was just kicking back and I was actually just cruising the internet looking for good news, because that's what I do these days. I look for good news. I think you can see the importance of looking for good news, especially this day and age with everything else that seems to be going on in the world and around this country. It's very, very important to look for the good stuff that's happening out there. There is good stuff, believe it or not. Now, if you just, focus on the slime stream media, all you're going to see is the, that buffet of fear and negativity that they're trying to feed us. And really what you want to do is, you want to turn that stuff off as much as possible. I know it's difficult. I'm guilty of this too. I like to take a look at what's happening, and then I get in that hamster wheel, right? With all this stuff, and follow that link and follow this link and look at that video, and this guy's sending me this thing. So, one good way to counter that, of course, is to just, look for the good news, just like Mr. Rogers said, Fred Rogers said. Look for the helpers, look for what's happening out there that's positive, that shows some hope, that shows some light at the end of the tunnel. And you'll find, if you look for it, if you just start looking for it, you'll find more and more and more and more of it, because it's about building momentum, right, guys? Just like with anything, you can build momentum in a limited capacity, in a limited direction, or you can build momentum in a more empowering, positive direction, okay? And once you find that one little thing and that second little thing and that third little thing, it's like a domino effect, right? It knocks all the others over, and boom, boom, boom. Before you know it, you've got a lot of momentum going in the direction of, hey, I want to become aware of what's positive, what's working out there. Who are the people that are helping? Where are the good people? And there's plenty of them, okay? So I like to go to this page called the Good News Network. And I'll drop a link for it down below. I'm not in any way affiliated with them whatsoever, but I love going to their website, okay? And there's a lot of positive stories there, uplifting stories about hope and things, light at the end of the tunnel kind of stories, okay? But I found one today that I wanted to kind of touch on, a little article. I'm going to read it to you, at least, a good chunk of it, because it really ties in so well with what we talk about. It ties in really well with the idea of visualizing as well, okay? And why visualizing is so important and just how effective it is. Now, this particular article is about specifically the act of planning a trip, right? Just planning a trip somewhere. So, it's actually, the headline is, research says that the simple act of planning a trip can help boost your mental health, okay? It actually makes you happier, it makes you feel better. So, studies from Cornell University have found that people who plan a trip in advance experience better feelings about their social situation, economic means, their state of health, and life in general, all right? It goes without saying that planning a trip in this moment would surely be difficult. So notice, of course, that, we're planning, we're in the planning stages. And if you think about everything that you want as being a trip of sorts, okay? It's like you're taking a trip to a different timeline. You're taking a trip to a different version of yourself, a different version of your life. Then it is kind of like planning a trip, isn't it? So you want to unlock, you want to unhook from the expectation of it has to happen. It has to happen at this point. It has to happen at that point. By then, by this time, or I'm done, or it's a failure. And we've talked about this a lot, guys, on this channel. So I think by now you should be aware of this, that you can't be obsessed about the outcome of this, whatever it is that you want, okay? Focus on the planning part, all right? So even though, it would be difficult right now to go on a trip, doesn't mean it's impossible, doesn't mean you can't go on a trip, it just means it might be difficult. But you know what? It could be easy too. But the fact is that you want to just get into the role of it. You want to get into the idea of it. And the very act of planning something like this, like you said, like these researchers found, which we all already knew. It's funny how science always catches up to us, doesn't it? They're a little slow, but they're doing their best. Just the very act of planning something can already make you feel better about that thing. So, however, that's no reason to put off your vacation planning this year, so as it could likely give you a significant mental boost during these turbulent times. So this is about a paper. It goes on, and this paper was published in 2014, University of Cornwall researchers Amit Kumar and Matthew Killingsworth, and of course I'll drop the link to this. So if you want to read this more in depth and follow the links in the trail, to that study, then of course you can do that. So the paper focused on an often overlooked aspect of an otherwise commonly researched field, experiential versus material consumption, and the psychological effects of both before the consumption takes place. So the psychological effect of feeling like you're already doing it in a way, just the act of planning something is almost like saying to your mind and signaling to your mind, this is a done deal. This outcome that I'm planning is a done deal. So I'm in the planning stages of something that, yes, to the logical mind, to the monkey mind, may or may not happen, okay? But to your larger mind, okay, to your inner being, it is happening because you're planning for it. So it sends the signal to your mind. And now in manifesting terms, that's what's very important. It sends the signal to your mind of going through the action of planning something that hasn't even happened yet. And even if you don't know that it's going to happen, it reinforces the idea that it's going to happen. So just like you might plan a date with your specific person, okay, even though you haven't talked in a year and whatever else is going on, just the act of planning that and going through it and even scripting the date out and visualizing, telling your friends about it after the fact and all that kind of stuff is an act of planning in a way. It's planning for the event. And that signals to your mind, I'm ready for this. I'm ready for this to happen, and I'm planning it, and I'm putting my awareness on it being a thing, on it happening or having already happened in a manifesting sense, so that the event itself, the physical event actually happening, is just a byproduct of what you're doing up here mentally, you see. It has to follow that mental path. So the study found that delayed gratitude, especially as it relates to travel, was more pleasurable than both immediate consumption and delayed consumption of material goods and services. And another 2002 paper reinforced this idea when it found that UK citizens, as was in the UK, were happier when they had a holiday trip planned. So now that's another important thing that really ties into what we're doing with manifesting here, is that the act of planning it, and we can translate that to the act of visualizing, because when you're visualizing what you want, when you're visualizing a scene or you're scripting a scene, guys, you're planning for it. You're planning for that event to take place. That will already put your mind at ease. That will already put you at ease. The idea of making it real and feeling it real, like Neville says, because it can't just be, be mindful of this. It can't be from a place of being obsessed about it and frustrated and impatient about it. And so therefore now you're going to, do your visualizing or planning the event, as a desperate means of making it happen. You have to be okay with it not happening right now. And one of the best ways to do that in terms of visualizing or planning or scripting and using any of those techniques is to make it so real, so convincing that your mind actually thinks that it's going through that action or that event at that moment. You close your eyes, you get calm, you meditate, and you make it real, okay? As real as you possibly can, so that your need or your urge or your desire for that thing is already being satisfied in those moments that you're visualizing it and in those moments that you're planning for it, you see. So that can be more convincing than actually witnessing something in physical reality, actually going through the material thing, the physical thing, as they say in this article. It appears that those who are waiting to go on a holiday are much happier with their life as a whole, experience less negative and unpleasant feelings, and thus enjoy an overall net positive effect from pleasant feelings. So yeah, again, it goes back to making it so real and feeling it so real that when you come out of your visualization, it's almost like you just did that thing. You just went through that event, right? You went through that date with your specific person. You just won the lottery because your mind is feeling the effects of that whatever that dopamine is, or that serotonin is, or whatever that chemical in our brains that makes us feel those pleasurable sensations, that feeling of satisfaction, that feeling of having accomplished something or having gone through something that we wanted, is enough often to come out of that, and then you go about your day and you feel better, you feel more optimistic, you feel more empowered, you feel more hopeful about things. So that as you do it more and more as well, you're practicing it and you get better at it. So that's why, visualizing can be such a wonderful uplifting activity as well. And the more you practice it, the more uplifting that it leaves you, the closer you are actually to your goal of it becoming an actual physical manifestation. But usually what happens, guys, is by that time, by the time it becomes a full-blown physical manifestation, it's not going to be a big deal to you because you've already been living it. You've already been living it and planning it and immersing yourself in it, immersing yourself in the feeling state of it, you see, so that your mind thinks, oh, well, this is just the next thing that happens, right? It's just natural. Of course, we've been doing this all along, haven't we? Because to your mind, what you're imagining and what's real, there's really no difference. It can't tell what's actually happening physically speaking in its physical reality or what's happening in your imagination if you make your imagination feel real enough, right? So I'll go on. I'm not going to read the entire article, but I found this really important. I wanted to do a video about this. So the journey begins with you, right? Our future-mindedness, mind you. And of course, they say future-mindedness, you want to bring it into the present in terms of how you're feeling it, right? So in your visualization, I'm taking it as an extra step than what the article says. It calls it future-mindedness. But what you're planning is for a future physical unfolding, a future physical manifestation. But you want to feel it as if it's happening right now. You want to visualize it as if it's happening right now. So it can be a source of joy if we know good things are coming. This will help convince you that good things are coming. You'll feel it more and more and more. You'll actually feel your manifestation coming together. Remember, the first sign of anything coming towards you that you want is a feeling of it. It's not going to be the numbers and the this, and that stuff is important. I'm not writing it off completely, but the first thing is going to be how it feels to you. You're feeling, you just have a feeling of, ooh, I feel it coming closer. I feel something happening. And then you use that to continue on, to continue pushing yourself on and keep doing the things, the visualizing and all those things, as long as you want to keep doing them, as long as it's fun and feels good for you. If it ever doesn't, like I've always said and many times said, then go do something else that doesn't have anything to do with the subject that you're visualizing about. And then when you've calmed down again, you go back to the act of visualizing. You don't ever want to go into it feeling frustrated and impatient and sad and angry and all that kind of stuff, because that'll backfire. It won't work as well for you, okay? So you want to center yourself first, then go into the visualizing and the scripting and all that stuff. So planning a trip can be especially exciting because we often know just enough about where we're going and what we're going to do to begin imagining specific pleasurable details of the places, like the sensation of the sun or the smell of campfire smoke in the forest. But there are also enough absent details to leave us wondering about the novelty of different moments. So the things that you fill in, the more detail, and as you're visualizing, of course, what's important is, really smelling it. If you're visualizing a date with your specific person or being on the beach with them or anything like that, or even being in bed with them, okay? Can you smell their body? Can you feel their hair? Can you, what's the weather like outside? Is it raining? You hear the pitter-patter of the rain outside your window. Maybe it's a little cool, so you're under the covers and you're cozy and comfy. And what does their skin feel like against you? What about the place you're having drinks together? It's a charming little place. What's the lighting like? What's the weather that day, that evening? It's a nice balmy evening. So you go for a walk and there's a little breeze. And you see what I'm saying? You want to get all your senses involved in this. You want to get your smell, your sound, your ears, your nose, your mouth, your eyes, everything, your touch, everything involved in it, right? So the more detail that you can fill in, pleasurable detail, the more real the scene is to your mind, the less it can differentiate, is this a real thing happening or not, right? And the more that it wonders, the more that it feels like a real event to your mind, the more you're pulling that actual thing towards you, okay? To become a full-blown physical manifestation, right? So, in a sense, we start to consume a trip as soon as we start thinking about it. Wow. So that's what you're doing. You're consuming your desire. You're consuming your desired preferred outcome the moment you start thinking about it, the moment you start planning it, the moment you start visualizing, the moment you put your positive focus on it. All right, guys? That's how this stuff works, okay? So you want to really Again, involve yourself, all your physical senses, and really get into the moment and really make it real. Remember when you were a kid in math class, you didn't want to pay attention, you didn't want to be there, but you started visualizing and daydreaming about what you're going to do after school, or that Saturday you're going to get on your bike with your friends and you're going to go over here and you're going to do that, or whatever it is. Or your mom or dad are cooking some nice dinner for you when you get home, and that's how you want to engage yourself. You're completely lost in the moment. If you're doing it correctly, you'll unfocus from what's going on around you in that physical moment, right? So that you really do begin to consume the thing that you're visualizing about it. You're living through it, all right? Whether you're doing so physically or not is irrelevant, because again, it's in the mind. The mind will think that you are, right? Because you're conjuring up all the feelings and sensations that would be there if you were actually physically going through it. So when we imagine eating gelato in a piazza in Rome or going water skiing with friends we don't see as much as we'd like, we get to experience a version of those events in our mind, right? That's precisely what we're doing when we're visualizing. This is really just describing visualizing and even scripting, because I was planning. Scripting is planning, okay? Look at a script like you would at a movie script. Before you start shooting a movie and getting all the actors and everything together, you're going to write it, right? You're going to write the script. You have to have a plan for the story. What's the story going to be? See yourself as the script writer. That's laying down the script for this movie of your life, or this movie of your relationship that you desire. Well, that's about as much as I'm going to get into that article. But I wanted to read that to you. I'll drop the link down below, and then you guys can read the rest of it. It goes on a little bit about some other things, but that really just kind of was the essence of what I wanted to get across with it. Because I found it, I was kind of chuckling to myself, and I thought, well, isn't this exactly what we talk about on this channel? And here it is. And I'm sure that the people writing this too have some idea and understanding of manifesting techniques and things like that. This isn't specifically about that, this Good News Network, but I read a little bit about the guy, and he really did just want to have he was sick of all the negative nonsense out there from the slime stream media that's constantly trying to pound us with fear because they want to weaken us. You understand? This machine, it's just a machine that's in place, but there are people out there, there are entities out there, okay? There are entities out there who don't want us to know this stuff. And I think that is what's really coming to the forefront right now. That's really what's being highlighted with all these events that we've been going through the last few months, and what's happening right now is to show us that we are in fact weaker when we're full of fear and hatred and anger and whatever else it is. And the puppet masters will be exposed. The ones that really are behind, the Wizards of Oz that are behind all this, pulling the strings and really playing us like a bunch of marionettes. But that's something for another video. Okay, I know I haven't talked about that so much, and to be honest, guys, I haven't really uploaded a lot because I've been thinking about how to present that information, or even if I should present that information. I'm sure a lot of you already know what I'm talking about. And there's another aspect too, because there's so much censorship going on right now, and I'm not going to name any specific outlets, but the one you're on currently would be guilty of that, as well as pretty much all of them are guilty of that at the moment. And the time is coming very soon when we're all going to have to put our foot down and even collectively take a stand against that. And I'm not talking about against any buildings or any physical entities. I'm talking about against these information outlets that have become far too big for their britches, okay? Far too powerful and far too cocky, and are taking far too many liberties with our minds, our emotional states, okay? And that's something we're going to talk about some more, probably. But I'll have to figure out just in what manner we're going to talk about that, okay? But for the most part, guys, this will always remain what it is. I'm a channel about manifesting, and of course the focus has always been manifesting your specific people. That's always going to be available on this channel. It's always going to be something I'm going to talk about, okay? But there are other things going on, and I realize that, maybe, I think a lot of people in my position right now doing videos like this about this subject matter have kind of grappled with this a little bit the last few weeks and months even. You know, what's going on? I mean, sometimes we have to kind of step back a little bit and take a look and figure out, well, what are we going to say about this, if anything at all? Or is it necessary to say anything? You know, what are we adding to the conversation, if anything? Is it better sometimes to say nothing and to help you guys, just for the duration of these videos, focus in another direction, okay? I happen to think that that's actually much more productive and important to do than to just add my voice to the chorus that's already out there shouting about this and shouting about that and talking about whatever, you know, the power elite and this and the other thing. We know those people exist. We know those entities are out there, okay? But oftentimes, and like I've said so many times, sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to think about the solution and focus on in a solution-oriented way, in a solution, in the direction of the solution, okay, rather than direction of the problem. Because what did Einstein say? We can't solve a problem with the same mindset that we use to create it, okay? So really, it does come down to shifting mindsets, okay? And, you know, part of me has said, well, let's wait for things to die down a little bit, emotionally speaking, because I've learned, you know, I used to, many years ago, I used to work with mental health patients and people who were, you know, emotionally, I would say they didn't have a lot of tools to deal with their emotions. And sometimes there would be physical confrontations that would happen because people would, you know, they would get angry or upset about something seemingly unimportant. And then, you know, freak out and throw things and start punching and biting and scratching. And, you know, what part of my training in doing that work was to just let them kind of make sure they're not hurting themselves or anybody else, but let them go through that first. And then once they're calm, then you can begin reasoning, then you can begin introducing some dialogue into the situation. But don't try to introduce dialogue or dialogue with people when they're in that sort of very, you know, emotionally heightened, intense kind of situation. They're not going to listen to you anyway. They're not going to receive your words anyway. So you're just wasting your breath and your energy. So sometimes it's good to just let things kind of play out a little bit. It's like what Abraham Hicks says, you know, well, you build momentum, and the momentum towards what's happening right now, what we're seeing happening right now, has been building for a long time. It wasn't just this incident or that incident that caused it. It was more like the straw that broke the camel's back, perhaps. But it's been building in a certain direction for a very long time. And sometimes when you have that much momentum going and for such a long period of time, even and especially from a manifesting standpoint, you have to let it play out before you can begin to start moving the momentum in another more positive, more productive direction, okay? So sometimes you got to let people freak out a little bit. And then when they calm down and they've exhausted themselves and they spend all their energy, then people are much more receptive to new ideas and new ways of looking at things and to dialoguing, right? So, you know, and yeah, like Abraham said, if you find yourself, you know, falling through the air at 30,000 feet without a parachute, just hang on, it'll be over soon, right? But then you start over. You pick up, you dust yourself off, and then you start over. My city also has been experiencing a lot of trouble. You hear the sirens over there. And I found myself in the middle of some of that brouhaha a few days ago. There was no trouble. There was a little bit of some things thrown and you know, some explosions and flashes and things like that. But, you know, I'm okay and everything was all right. It happened to be right here in my neighborhood. I decided to go check it out, and I could see the anger. I could see, you know, just that people were just not going to listen to any kind of reason. And it's sort of like, you know, it's like trying to, you know, calm someone down who's screaming at the top of their lungs. They're not hearing you. They're not even hearing themselves, okay? They're not even hearing themselves. They're not in that space at that moment. So sometimes you got to let the momentum play out. And then once it does, then you can begin to pick up the pieces. You can begin to assess where you are now. Where are we? What point have we now reached? And where do we want to go from here? Where do we want to be? And now you can begin to build the momentum in a direction that's much more sustainable, much more positive for yourself and for everybody involved. Okay. So anyway, I wanted to talk to you guys about that. Again, like I said, I'll drop the link for this article if you want to read a little more in depth about it. If you want to follow this specific study, I think, it could be interesting to do. So thanks again for watching, everyone. And, as usual, if you haven't done so already, please hit like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share this with anybody that you think might benefit from it or might enjoy it, might like the cut of my jib. If you want some personal coaching with me, please follow the link down in the description box to the website. That'll explain everything for you. And, if you want to leave me a tip, you can do that down below as well. And I appreciate everything, all the tips and all the generosity. I always appreciate it very, very much, guys. So thank you for those who've done it, and even for those who haven't done it. Thank you for watching, all right? So until next time, guys, I'm 𝗙Con. I wish you all the best. Stay safe out there, and happy manifesting. Bye-bye.